Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Are you able to hear me, guys? Good. Awesome. So, my question was, how was your lunch? But then he stole that cue from me. So, I have to think of another question now. Okay, how many of you have heard the term UX writing here? Oh, that's quite a good number. So, you'll have fun in this session. Cool. So, let's start. Uh, what do you make of this copy? We'll talk about it in detail, but just to start things off. Yeah. So now you know why you are here, and we'll try to work through some of this and make it better if you can. Maybe not these ones exactly, but yeah, I'll give you some examples around that. So, uh, while I was working on this topic, I thought that let's do it as a story. So this is a story around of a hero, and I'm not that hero. The hero is someone else. And while working through, I realized that let's have a story around this hero. So what is that story? So if you take a hero's journey, it starts with this, like a mundane routine life. Then there's a call to adventure. There are heaps of challenges on the way, hurdles. Then there are mentors. It can be girlfriend, it can be a teacher, someone, and then finally the hero learns few skills, weapons, tricks on the way, which will lead her to the victory. So in our case, the product is the hero. So while I was starting to do product UI microcopy, I was introduced in my previous job into UX writing. And I was thinking that I have done technical communication for 10 plus years now. So how difficult can it be? It should be a cakewalk. I've written so many elaborate guides that it should be a cakewalk. Apparently it is not. It's like moonwalking. Walking. uh, so that's how I felt. And let's start with call to adventure. So as I said, when I was introduced to UX writing, it led me to thinking, research, talking to people. And I came across this, which is a simplistic definition. It is like, what is UX writing all about? For me, UX writing is all about these four words. It starts with the product, which is our hero. What is the product trying to do? It's trying to talk to the users. How does it talk to the users? Through meaningful conversations. And those conversations are created in this particular instance through words and designs. So this is a quadrant of UX writing for me, that as I have understood it, there can be varied definitions, but this is how I have understood and worked my way through it. Now, once hero was living a mundane life, but then suddenly realized that, wow, there's something called UX writing, and it can be included in the product's journey to work through better designs and come up with meaningful content that can help the users solve certain problems or achieve what they are trying to do in a better way. Now, once the product has realized that there is a call to adventure, of course, there are bound to be challenges. So along with the product, I was looking through what are some of the challenges that are there. So these are some of the challenges. As I said, the content is too technical here. If you see, then it's the message is not clear, concise. What is this message trying to explain? Again, terms which are like jargons, malformed. What is malformed? For the end user, it doesn't mean anything. This is trying to be cheeky, and this I liked as a good and bad example both, because when you don't select, there are three options to register to. One is Google authentication, Facebook authentication, and the third one is email. So when you select email authentication, they say you are old school. So it's trying to be a little cheeky in moving you to use the previous two authentication methods and not email. So yeah, that one. And this one is I found it on the internet. This a person shared on Twitter or some place where it was winter in his area in his region, and it still showed summer. So it's without context. If you don't know your audience well, this can happen. So there are these challenges, as I mentioned. So it's lack of strategy, brand is not there, or it's not in line with the brand. The content is too robotic, too technical, and there are three broad categories I could categorize these into. You can have other ways as well. This is just what I found, what was relevant. So this is first is content. So what is the type of the content? Second is how you organize it, and third is it supersedes everything, which is the vision that you bring with the product. And normally these challenges can be categorized into these three instances. So come up with content could be robotic, technical, it could be a little out of context, organization, and visions, so on and so forth. Now, once you have realized the challenges, the product is trying to work its way through, but there's no easy way to solve these problems, right? You can fix a thing here and there. You can convert a robotic string or technical string into non-technical one. A writer implements certain thing here, another one does it differently there. So there's suggestions from the UX teams, there's suggestions from the product management team. But how do you all consolidate and show that it still represents the same product on the whole? So for that, similar to style guides, we have mentors, which are very inspirational, by the way. They are voice and tone. Now, how many of you think that those are both the same things? Or what's the difference between them, if you can tell? There's a quite a bit difference in terms of UX writing in my little study and research that I've seen. This is not ordinarily the same thing. We're not talking about active voice and things. There's slightly modified meanings to this. Let's understand them. Let's start with voice first. So what is voice? Voice is something that you define at the top level. It is based on the industry that you're working for, and it remains consistent throughout. So if you go back to your company, you will find that there are already branding guidelines set up by marketing, which defines the company's voice outside. So that will be reflected in whatever comms that are available or social media that is available, right? But that needs to reflect in the product microcopy as well. So you can use those directly, or you can take them and work through to define a voice for the product, which is used for branding. So I've seen a lot of companies have branding voice, and there are generally 3 words. I don't know. There is something about 3 words that stick in the mind. So there are certain like for a fintech company, I'm going to show the example later. Like Freedom, we have come up with straightforward, to the point, and precise. If I'm not wrong, I'll check. And if for a company like Slack, just a moment. Yeah, so it's for a fintech company, it's trustworthy, straightforward, and precise. And for something like Slack, the brand voice could be cheerful, funny, and full of emojis, fond of emojis. Yeah. So coming back to the tone. Now, once we have this voice set, it generally doesn't change unless there is a restructure and rebranding and things like that. Whereas when it comes to the tone, it actually appeals to the user's emotion. At a particular point in time, a user is trying to achieve something using your product. Whether it's trying to submit a query, or there is an error message which they have come across. So you need to be to tweak your voice in a certain way, ever so slightly, that it appeals to the emotion. You don't want to be funny or cheeky when the user is frustrated trying to use your product, right? So that's where the tone comes into picture. It can be a little more alarming, helpful. It can have various emotions. I recently did a non-communication course, if you have heard about it. So there is like a full page of emotions that it talks about. So we have used some of it in creating mood boards for different user scenarios, and we drive through and come up with messages that aligns to tone and specific moods of the users. So that helps. Just Google about mood boards. You'll find information around creating. That's primarily a UX thing, but we have tried to use it in the context of UX writing as well. So yeah, that's it. Now let's look at some of the examples that will make it a little more clear. So here I'm talking about Freedom, my company, where it will be. So the voice remains consistent. The voice is consistent as straightforward, trustworthy, and precise, right? Whereas the tone varies. Here, the user is trying to submit an expense, and there is they can use a template. It's like any other template. If you use Confluence, if there is a template to create a page, you would use a template. So it's similar. But if there are no templates, it encourages the user to create. So it's informative and encouraging. Whereas there's another instance wherein if a card is charged incorrectly, then you can dispute it. You can't be encouraging in that scenario. It is only if you think that has happened incorrectly, you would want them to do it, right? So, and there are certain conditions allocated, along with it. Yeah. So those are the two scenarios there. Similarly, here, Slack is cheerful, funny, full of like emojis. But one is fun and chatty, whereas it's because you're trying to send a magic link, you're trying to register or log in. Whereas another scenario is an error message. So it's still sincere. It's still with an element of fun, but it's straight to the point and sincere. A little long, I would feel, but yeah, it's Slack for you. So they're good with their microcopies. Yes. Now, coming to weapons. So once the mentors have helped the product in setting certain benchmarks or inspiring the product to go and achieve great things. On the way, product starts its journey to rise from the challenges and go upwards. How does it go upwards, the product? So with the help of some weapons, skills, or I would say working paradigms. So these are the weapons of choice. So the first one is think about the audience always. You start with, this is a very technical communication 101, that you always start with audience analysis. You think of the audience in mind and start from there and make it personal. Like Google does an amazing thing, which I read about, is in certain areas they address the name as with in full, like first name and last name, whereas in other areas it's just first name, which is to address, because in certain cultures it's not good to address just the first name. So that's customizing. That's making it personal for that user. Yeah, and around that, there was another example. Yeah. Also, this is another pet peeve of mine. How many of you have struggled with the developers saying that, oh, if we put two set of strings different for different scenarios, there will be a lot more implementation required, as against if you just put a generic message which covers both the scenarios or 3-4 scenarios, and that should solve the problem, isn't it? Because coming up with strings is easier, but what they don't realize, or the management doesn't realize, is that the impact on user experience is much more than the initial cost of implementing certain things. So I always have those discussions. Sometimes it's like angry discussions as well, that we should have try to make those messages personal. But yeah, so that's good. Second one is, yeah, uh, this is again a given, that you have so little real estate on the screen, on the web, on the UI, on the mobile device, that you have to be very precise, very concise, and you should drive the message home, whether it is a error message or a button or a label, anything. Third is drive actions. So this generally we have implemented this in mobile pop-ups, because what happens is that you don't want okay and cancel and those kind of button labels. What happens if I click OK or cancel without reading the message that's on the pop-up? It doesn't help, right? So, and people tend to do it a lot more than you would realize. So rather than having OK and cancel, you should have action buttons. So you provide the context in the message, what will happen if it goes wrong, and then have an action as the button. So that will result in confident actions from the users. Another one is, this is another very close to my heart, which is talking to the design teams. Earlier, what happened was that the design team would create mockups with lorem ipsum or just random stuff, and then when it comes to me or the development team, I sit back and work my way through the screenshots or mockups, and we go from there, which resulted in a lot of time wastage as well as going to and fro. So now we have started a process where we integrate with the design team pretty early into the process, and before even it reaches the development team, we integrate and we talk to them, we work through and contribute to the mockups directly, so that when the team starts implementing it, development teams, they get the perfect copy, which we, of course there are changes later on as well, but yeah. And lastly, yeah, use plain language, which is active voice, strong verbs. I think a lot of you guys might be aware of plain language. I don't need to elaborate a lot on it, but keep it as simple as possible, simple present tense, because that helps to make the content as inclusive as possible, as translate it can be translated into other languages without too much ambiguity. Yeah, so those are the paradigms or weapons of choice. Now, once you've done all this, the hero or the product would return victorious, hopefully. At least we have started that journey towards victory. And uh, so what does victory look like? Someone said, like design, good microcopy is invisible. If no user would have just seen the uh, pop-up message and said, wow, what a wonderful writing this is. Right? So the copy is mainly invisible. Second, it is concise and helpful. It helps the user achieve what they are trying to do and not feel lost. As a user, I have also felt so frustrated and lost if I am on a screen staring at a product and I don't know what to do now or where to go from here. And the third thing is, as I mentioned earlier, confident actions. So if a user is not thinking before taking actions and still able to smoothly do the process of whatever tasks they are trying to achieve, then I think we have won. We have won, and that's victory. Yeah. Before we have time, yeah, cool. So there's this really something which we have worked immensely towards, is a curious case. How many of you have worked on empty state screens? If you have done, yeah. So that is a very close to my heart again thing, that we've gone to and fro about the empty screens, whether what should the message be, how can it be helpful, how can we make it more relevant for the users. Because this, if you see in your product, if you go back and you will find that this is an uh, amazingly good real estate that is getting wasted. You can do so much with this empty screen. So UX team and community technical community at our company, we are driving this change to have some better messages coming in here, and we're taking help from other uh, pioneers like uh, so, oh, I forgot the name. Mailchimp, yeah, everyone knows about them, and few others. So yep, so this is what we have tried to achieve. It's the same message. If you see here versus here, it's the same message, right? But there is a design change, and there is a level of context that is added, and there is a subsequent action. There's a action that they can take. They don't feel lost. If they can't find anything here, they don't feel lost. They know they can try modifying the filters. Similar, there's reward as well. Oh, there was too many discussions around the thumbs up icon, because in some cultures it doesn't work and things like that. But then the UX team did persist with that icon. So, but there is reward if you have completed what you were supposed to. There is a well done message, and again there is a subsequent action that you may take. You can change the. You want to check your if you have expenses in your delegation list. So the people can who know the product well, they will be able to find that there's under show expenses, show my expenses, there is another delegate option. So yep. And final slide is, as I told in my precept, that there is a lot more commonalities between technical communication and UX writing. So we don't know it a lot, but we have been doing the role of UX writer for a good period of time. When I look back, I think that I've done intermittently. I've done this role more often before. But there are good number of skills that are common, and there are, if the ones that are not, you can always work on it and make this a success. Yep. Thank you.